Welcome to School's Out 80's Comedy Story Time.
Hey everybody, welcome to School's Out 80's. This is our 5th episode. Really excited today. Special guest comes all the way from Charlottesville, Virginia, and I want to welcome her today. So Elysia, Jane Buss, go ahead and say hello to the folks here at School's Out 80's.
Hey everybody, it's School's Out 80's. I'm really happy to be here.
Awesome. So we're going to try to, again, like we always do on every show, have a bunch of fun. Hopefully everybody that listens can, grab their favorite beverage, get together with friends. That's what it's all about. We just want people to laugh, get together. I think that's something that's really missing right now in the world. I mean, I see it all the time with people looking at their cell phones in restaurants and things like that. Personally, it's kind of disgusting to me, but anyway, so that's kind of one of the biggest reasons why we put this show together. You're going to hear a lot about Elysia today. I'm going to give you a little bit of background on her, though. So she's originally from Seattle. She has just got done with a whirlwind men's conference journey. I think it's been like 4 months that you've been doing that, Elysia. Is that correct?
I was traveling across the United States for 4.5 months before moving to Charlottesville in February of this year.
Okay. And two, you're going to hear a lot about horses and her equestrian therapy that she does, which is quite intriguing to me. I actually have a friend of mine who has an autistic daughter who really benefits from interaction with horses. And I think she goes to a horse ranch at least once or twice a week, and it really helps her. So I can completely understand that. And then two, Elysia, she also hosts some YouTube, a YouTube channel herself. She'll probably get into that as well. But again, this is School's Out 80's. It's all about comedy. It's all about kind of sitting back, relaxing, hopefully regressing a little bit back to what it was like in the 80's. I know I was regressed pretty bad in the 80's, probably still am. But Elysia, when you think about the 80's and you think about like stories from the 80's, tell us, like, what do you think was funny?
Oh my gosh, from the 80's. So I'm just barely old enough to remember the 80's. I'm 41 years old. I just turned on May 25th. And it was so much fun to get to think about the 80's. And when I go back, I think about Michael Jackson and Madonna and like learning their amazing dance moves. And I think about like crazy 80's hair and like the wild colors that we would wear. And it was, it was just so funny to think about all of the, like, it was just so bright and bold and extreme. And it was just a really playful time, I feel like, in history. And the dancing was amazing. And who doesn't love 80's music? Like, honestly, I still feel like 80's music is some of the best music that's out there.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I would wholeheartedly agree. And if you look at like some of the professionals out there, they just absolutely copied Michael Jackson stuff. Like,
oh,
he was
yeah.
unique.
For sure. And then like living in Olympia in Seattle, I mean, like we had Nirvana, right? And I actually, I went to middle school with Kurt Cobain's cousin. And yeah, so it was really an interesting time. It was a great loss to our community when he died, but his music lives on. And yeah, Smells Like Teen Spirit is a funny thing. And for people who don't necessarily, the Teen Spirit was actually a deodorant at the time. And it wasn't just that we're like, yay, teens, you know.
Right, yeah. No doubt, no doubt. Gosh, I still remember the first time I ever saw that Nirvana song on MTV. And like, I didn't know at the time that it was going to completely take out 80s hair metal, which some of the 80s hair metal I'm not a fan of at all. I know that goes counter to like everybody that just embraces it, but I'm kind of a music snob, and some of the best bands in the world, you cannot sit there and put them next to some of those bands that came out in the 80s. Not that I don't enjoy it, because some of it's a lot of fun, what have you, but it's not like The Who. It's not like Led Zeppelin. It's not the complexity of that type of music. Though, I mean, there were some amazing ones too that came out that were pretty kind of simplistic too, like Motley Crue and that kind of thing. But would have never known again when Nirvana came out that it was just going to put a knife in the back of hair metal.
Yeah.
I mean, I can remember.
Great band. It was really sad when that all fell apart. But yeah, we had a lot of great music that came out of Seattle in particular.
Yeah.
And always have. It's a great music city.
Oh, yeah. I mean, just the fact that as much music that's come out of Seattle is pretty amazing. And Nirvana, I think Nirvana kind of started it all, didn't it? I mean, Nirvana and the other great big band that came out of there, Soundgarden, is that right? Yeah.
I mean, I think so. We had Soundgarden for ladies bands. We had Slater-Kinney, and they're a fantastic band. And I'm actually terrible at band names. I'm so bad at it. I remember some of the bigger ones, and you know, Metallica was a lot of fun. And yeah, I actually got to meet the Rolling Stones in like the 2000s when I was doing massage backstage at the summer nights.
Wow.
Yeah, I got to meet some different bands back there, and the Rolling Stones was one of them. So that was pretty cool.
Okay. So you met Mick Jagger?
I did actually meet Mick Jagger, and yeah.
Interesting.
Okay. Yeah, they're really nice guys.
Yeah, Mick Jagger is an incredible individual. So you met Mick. So that's wild. So you were just like backstage.
Little known fact about me: I've gotten to meet famous people.
Interesting. So you're backstage in their deal where they have all their food laid out and everything.
No, I was just like out, and it was on the pier in Seattle, and so I was giving massage to the people that were working backstage, and to like just basically some of the people that were coming through, and some of the performers that were on stage, like the drummers and like secondary guitar players and whatnot, and a few different bands. I got to see India Arie, and I was supposed to get to give massage to Bjork, but she passed out on stage. So it's a rough day for her. But yeah, no, it was a really amazing experience. And I can't remember what happened. Like they had offered for me to like come back to their hotel to give them a massage, but I didn't end up going. And then I also met, there was some other famous musician that I met at a club in Seattle that there was an after party that one of my girlfriends wanted to go to. And I was like, I don't think that's a good idea.
That's funny. That's really funny.
A little bit too wild and crazy. And
yeah,
I'm all for a good time, but there's certain situations that you're just like, maybe another time. But that's the thing about Seattle, like you get to meet musicians and like movie stars when they come through, and like different fun stuff. So it's a great city to play in. And I danced a lot in my 20s in Seattle, like salsa and tango and freestyle and hip hop, in the different dance clubs before things shifted in Seattle. So
gotcha. Okay.
It's to be in one's 20s for sure.
That's funny. Okay, so I have a quick little anecdotal story about going backstage to see a band, and then we're going to talk about, because you're telling me stories about technology in the 80s and
no goodness.
anything like that. We're definitely going to get to that because that's funny. So I would live here in Dallas and had the ability to go to the Megadeth concert because a customer of mine was doing lights and sound production for a band called Lacuna Coil. And so we get the passes and everything, my buddy and I, and in Dallas, I mean, it's pretty hardcore to get backstage. You have to present ID, you have to have the right pass and everything. I've been places where you could get backstage at 10 feet from Vince Neil and have absolutely nothing on you whatsoever to say you're supposed to be back there. But so anyway, so the guy lets us back. We're back, and we're in the like the dressing room for Lacuna Coil, and it's a band fronted by a female singer. At the time, I think she was like 38 years old or whatever. But we're back there. We're drinking all their beer, and it's an Italian band, so it's all Peroni beer, and it's funny because we're back there, and so the lead singer comes out, and she's talking to us, and we're so egocentric here in the United States.
No.
Yeah, and we're talking to this woman who's obviously famous, and my buddy's like, "I understand you're an Italian band," and she's like, "Yes," and he goes, "Well, what part of the?" He's like, "Are you from New York, New Jersey?" And she's like, "No, we're from Italy." And I'm like, "Oh my God." It just gives you an idea, like everybody thinks everybody else should be from the United States. I just found it extremely funny. And we were back there with Mickey Dees from Lemmy's band. You know who Lemmy is? What's his band? But he was a big heavy metal guy, and he died recently. But the drummer was back there, and we proceeded to drink all of Lacuna Coil's Peroni because they were going on stage and they didn't want to really drink. So we were just like going from, I'm trying to think what they call those rooms in the backstage there, but it's like where all the food's set up and everything, and it's just they have refrigerators full of beer. And we were really close to Megadeth's backstage area too. But that's just kind of anecdotal and kind of funny. But okay, so tell us all about like technology in the 80s, because kids that didn't grow up in the 80s, they can't relate to like what we went through. Very difficult in the 80s, even just to watch TV.
Technology in the 80s. Yeah. So I grew up on a farm on 15 acres in this 100-year-old farmhouse. And we had a TV, and it was probably the size of like some large monitors these days, but not even like that crazy big, you know?
Sure.
And it was a black and white TV. And it had these little tiny buttons, but in order to turn the TV on and off and change the volume, the button had fallen off. And so we actually had a pair of pliers that we had to use to, to turn it on, to pull it and change it. And then we had bunny ears, which for those of you who don't know what bunny ears are, they're like two little metal rods that stick out from your TV. And when it rains, or it's super windy or something silly with the weather, sometimes you have to move your bunny ears a little bit more to be able to catch the signal for the TV in order to get a clear picture on the television, because otherwise it could be like a little bit wavy or staticky and just be like,
Exactly.
and yeah, and so you had to mess with the dial sometimes a little bit more. Because if you lost it, and it's like maybe you want to watch a sports game and you're like, I'm missing the play, or like somebody's not paying attention to where they're walking and they bump the TV, and then you have to start all over again with moving the bunny ears or like messing with the dials. And yeah, so you get it just right, and then you like your hands come flying off of the TV. You're like, okay, we got it, and then you go back down. And yeah, it was a pretty big deal when we got a color TV.
I bet.
Yeah.
Do you recall what year that was that you guys got a color TV?
Oh man, I don't remember. I think it was maybe maybe it was 88 or 89.
Okay.
So I was 8 or 9 years old, I think, before I got to have a color TV, and it was like a box TV. And we also got, I think we got a dishwasher that year too, which was super exciting because it was like living in a farmhouse and growing up. And I actually remember, like I was saying, like when we first moved to the farm when I was really little, one of my first memories being like washing clothes in a metal pan, like outside with a dish, like, sorry, not a dishboard, but like a metal board that you used to put the clothing on with the soap and then dip it. And
Sure.
if anybody's seen the old movie Far and Away with Nicole Kidman, then you would know exactly what it is that I'm talking about. Because there's a scene in there where she has to teach her mom how to wash the clothes like that. And yeah, and then we would actually hang it out to dry on the line outside with giant clothespins. And then we got a washing machine, and then a few years later we got a dryer, and that was super exciting. And just this evolution. And then video games came along and Mario Kart, and that was amazing. And I think I got my first computer when I was 13 at my dad and my stepmom's house in Seattle, but I don't think we got a computer at my parents' place in Olympia till I was like 15 years old. So I actually remember being in high school and having to type up papers on an actual typewriter. And that's an interesting experience as well. But I think it's cool to get to have grown up in one of the last generations that got to experience life without like a lot of technology. And to remember what it was like when you had, like, you wanted to have a conversation, there were no cordless phones, there were no cell phones. Like, you sat in the kitchen and you got to have a conversation with your entire family listening to what you had to say. And then if there was a voicemail, then sometimes eventually there was a voicemail machine and the whole family could listen to. And I remember I had these two girls that they were twins, and they were friends of mine in high school. And I would leave them these ridiculously long, silly messages, and they loved the messages that I left so much that their entire family literally like gathered around the voicemail machine to listen to the messages that I left.
It's hilarious.
Yeah, I mean, like they would literally just like max out the machine, so they would just all hang around and listen to my messages and then delete it. It was funny.
So real quick question. Okay, so you grew up on a farm.
Yeah.
And so you guys got the color TV about the late 80s.
Mm.
So did you also, at what point did you get like one of those great big huge satellite dishes at some point?
Oh yeah, at one point we did get a dish. I think it was in the 90s. I was in high school when we finally got a dish. I don't remember.
And they're huge, right? But I grew up in the country too. I didn't grow up on a farm, but like in 4 different directions, you could hit farmland where I grew up.
It was like this big, the dish, if I remember correctly.
So it was like that. So okay.
Yeah.
What was the circumference? Like 6? I mean, was it like 6 feet, 7 feet, 8 feet, or was it much smaller?
No, it wasn't like one of those crazy dishes.
Okay, because there are dishes out there that like you can talk to Russia with.
Oh no, for sure. I actually, during my 4.5-month journey, I stayed in a bunker that was above ground that used to be one of the places where the president put in like communication through, like way back in the day. And so they had this really interesting tall tower, and the president no longer uses that particular station, but that's what it was originally built for. And so I did get to see like giant satellites, and it's
wow.
Yeah, it was cool. Yeah, so it's a TV station now, but like it's been in National Geographic, and like they've come through there and done documentaries on it. And so it was cool to get to stay in a place like that it's graded to withstand like nuclear and biological warfare. Like it's crazy.
Wow. Yeah. Sounds like it's crazy.
Yeah. Lots of adventurous stories. I've lived a great life. But back to the 80s.
Yeah.
So, did you guys have a giant dish at your place that was like?
No, we didn't. But I do have some funny stories from the 80s. So like when I was a kid, I can remember being at the dinner table because, like, back then you had Sunday dinner with your family, and your grandparents came over. My granddad died early on, but my grandmother was still like a big part of our life. So we had her over for like Sunday meals. And this is something a lot of people can't relate to, but like cigarette smoke wasn't seen as a bad thing in the 80s or even in the 70s. And so my dad would just be smoking a cigarette, and just like, I've had so much secondhand smoke blown into my face, it would blow your ever living mind. And my dad would just like, I would be sitting right next to him, and he would just be blowing smoke into my face. I mean, it was like a Kiss concert, you know. And then like the conversations would be really good. Like you could just learn history at the Sunday dinner table.
Yeah.
And there are like certain points in my life that I think of that were historical in nature. And one of them was when my grandmother said, talking to my dad, who, I'm Italian, so my dad's name was Freddie, but she'd say, "Fred, what do you think about that thing? I just got something from the cable people that they call it like pay TV, Fred. What do you think about pay TV?" And my dad, being like the super conservative guy, is like, "I would never pay money for pay TV. That's so stupid." Even though he does cable, and, you know, you pay for cable. But the whole idea of like paying an extra, and at that point, I think it was like $5 to have HBO. It wasn't that expensive, but $5 when HBO first came out was like super expensive.
Yeah.
And what they did in the beginning of HBO is they gave it to everybody for free. So if you're on cable, you got HBO for free. At some point during the day, though, it was like mature cable. So like at like 9 o'clock, it hit mature, and you had R-rated movies, and there weren't that many R-rated movies out back then. But it was like Shampoo was an R-rated movie or whatever. And at that point, you still saw it, but it had like 3 lines through it, and it was like buzzing. And then you got the crazy cable box. So my dad, he folded at some point, and we got HBO. But some of the channels he wouldn't pay for. But you still had like all the channels listed on your little cable box that sat on top of your TV. So it'd say like, you know, Showtime or Cinemax or whatever they were. I mean, there weren't that many back then, maybe 3. But what you do is you'd have a friend spend the night, and you'd either do it at their house or your house. And if you pressed it perfectly, you could get that channel. Like, it was so wild. Like, somebody could stand there, and you would have them stand there like for an hour at a time as you're watching the show. It was hilarious.
That's so random.
I know. It was the things that you did for entertainment back then. I mean, we had a blast in the 80s. Oh my God. My friends and I, some of my friends don't even remember the 80s. That's how good of a time we had. Me, I kind of remember most of it.
One of the things I loved about the 80s that I feel bad for kids these days is the level of freedom that we had as children. Because like growing up in like this kind of country suburb situations, as soon as my brothers and I were able to ride bikes, and I'm the oldest of 3, we're all 2 years apart. And as soon as we were old enough to ride bikes, and I learned how to ride a bike like really early, like that was just, my cousin got really mad because I stole his thunder. He got like this big kid boy bike with no training wheels, and everybody's like, "Yay!" And then when nobody was looking, I like jumped on his bike and started riding it around the cul-de-sac. I thought his dad was gonna like hurt somebody. He was so mad. And my cousin was at least 2 years older than me, which was funny. But anyways, yeah, so my brothers and I, we would just hop on our bicycles and we would ride around the neighborhood all day long. And like without cell phones, like we would just go, you know. So we were maybe like 6 and 8. And my youngest brother, if we were just gonna go to grandma and grandpa's house, like a few blocks away or something like that, he'd jump on his trike and like come with us, you know. And
that's awesome.
we didn't always have helmets, you know, because back in the day you didn't do that. We had helmets like later that we were supposed to wear, but I don't remember how old we were when that finally became a thing. And there was just like, we weren't supposed to cross a main road, so like we could bike all we wanted through the neighborhoods. but crossing one of the big roads was not allowed, which of course we totally did anyways, but we were fine. And
Right.
but yeah, like literally from the time we were kids, like all the way through high school, it's like you just knew you had to be back home by dusk. And like there was always dinner at the table, and our parents never worried. Like they genuinely didn't worry about it, and we never got in trouble. Our dog got in more trouble than we did. He was so friendly. We had this black lab, and the dog catcher, like everybody in the neighborhood fed our dog. And
Right.
so he would just like he was this black lab, and he was so fat because like everybody fed him. Like one time I was in high school and this little kid was like, "Blackie's my dog," and I was like, "No, he's not. He's my dog."
That's funny.
And he was like, "No, we feed him like Oreos and steak," and I was just like, "Are you trying to murder my dog?" Then the
That's
dog
hilarious.
would just call him, and Blackie would be like, "Okay," and he'd like jump in the dog catcher's like vehicle, and then Mom would have to go break him out of dog jail at the pound, and it just became like this running joke. But we never kept our dogs, and they just were neighborhood dogs, which was great.
Yeah.
They didn't attack anybody. Like they were just like happy-go-lucky doggos, and thankfully never got hit by a car. And people just knew to pay attention because people didn't have cell phones that they were on, so they actually paid attention when they were driving their cars.
Exactly.
Look out for kids and dogs, it's fine. You know, and it wasn't that there weren't people out there probably that were dangerous or whatnot, but it was just we had street smarts and we paid attention, and I feel like people in the neighborhood still looked out for each other.
Oh
And
yeah.
yeah, it's just a beautiful time. Like I feel bad for kids to not have that kind of freedom, because I think there's a lot of autonomy that you build and resiliency within yourself, to be able to be secure and to go out and experience the world like that and not live in fear that every time you turn around something's going to hurt you, you know.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's how I grew up, with a ton of like freedom to get on my bike, go wherever I wanted. I mean, my neighbors and we had motorcycles, and it's like
Nice.
it's like we didn't like ride our motorcycles on the city streets, but we had enough like land that it was fun enough to just like ride around our house and their house, and we just took turns doing it, and it was so much fun. They were kind of like more like mini bikes. But then too, we'd go to the lake and ride our motorcycles out there, and then we did a bunch of bicycling too. I mean, it was insane how much bicycling we did before we got to be 16 and could drive cars and such. But I can wholeheartely relate to that. But I do have a dog story to share with you that's pretty good. So we had it helps to give you a backdrop of how we got this dog. So my brother, he had a lot of health issues when he was younger, and in fact, when he was like 15, I think he was 15 years old, he had a brain tumor removed from his head, and it was right next to his pituitary gland. So it could have killed him. Luckily, it didn't. And but when he's in the hospital, my mom's like, you know, knowing that like he could die through this surgery, this was perfect for him, because she's like, "Jeff, honey," this is my mom, this is how she talks. It's always honey. "Jeff, honey, you know, I know this, this is going to be an incredible thing that they're going to do. And I just want you to know that after we get done with this, there's going to be something really special your dad and I are going to do for you. And we want to get you a pet." Then it was all over. And my mom at the time was thinking, maybe he's going to want like a little gerbil or a little thing, that you put in a little cage. And she's like, so be thinking about it, honey, and let us know what kind of pet you want. And he goes, "Oh, I already know." And she goes, "Really, honey, what would you like?" And he was like, "I'd like a Saint Bernard puppy."
Aww.
Saint Bernard puppy. So our Saint Bernard puppy, he was kind of named after me. And I don't know how this happened, but he had a completely German name. So his name was Hans Friedrich von Sohn. And my name's John Frederick Sansoni. And so it's like the German equivalent of my name. And I don't know why my brother had to have such a detailed name for his little puppy, but his puppy was a blast. I mean, it was just this little stocky Saint Bernard puppy with these huge legs, and you just knew he was going to be a huge dog.
Yeah.
And so anyway, Hans got older, and lots of mischief that he got into. But one of the things that was kind of interesting was that, like, a lot of people haven't been around big animals to know like how big an animal can get. Our dog was 200 pounds as an adult. One morning we were getting ready for church. He wagged his tail. He put out a picture window. You got to be like a picture window just by wagging his tail. He was all excited because the family was all up and dressed up and everything. He was running around, and he doesn't realize how big he is. And he's standing next to our picture window, wags his tail, boom, it's gone. And my dad, real laid back guy. I think that's kind of where I get it from. My mom's real high strung. My dad was real laid back. And my dad was like, sure, let's just go to church. Like, anything. So that's something that happened with Hans. But the thing that makes me remember him from the 80s was his doghouse. His doghouse was huge. So we actually got his doghouse from a family friend who had 2 Saint Bernards. So his doghouse was so big that it was like a children's clubhouse. Like, the dog was huge. And so when my brother and I were younger, my mom got the idea that soda pop was bad for you.
Because it is.
She decided she wasn't going to buy us any Pepsi, any Coca-Cola, nothing. We weren't going to drink any soda pop. I think she was still making us Kool-Aid, which is probably just as bad for you.
Yeah, I mean, Coca-Cola did have cocaine in it way back in the day, but like.
Yeah, possibly. I have no idea.
In the beginning, it did.
Okay, sure. And I think it was a money thing too. Like, my parents were just starting a business, and my mom saw this one thing that she could cut out that was costing a lot of money, because we went through a lot of soda pop in my family. But my brother and I would not be denied. So I think he was 16, so I was probably 12. So long story short, my brother would get allowance money from me, because kids got allowances back then and had to do chores.
Yeah.
And so I would give him the little bit of allowance that I got, and we would store soda pop, like a large amount of soda pop actually, in the doghouse with the dog.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny.
So the dog would have to like sleep in the corner, and he's huge already, but this was a huge doghouse, and you could have 2 full-grown Saint Bernards in this doghouse. So that was early on in Hans's career. He was harboring, soda pop that we weren't supposed to have. And then later on in Hans's career, there was beer in there, but that's kind of how Hans's life went. He was constantly harboring,
some sort of contraband.
Yeah, contraband, right? Yeah, he was harboring contraband. And then as I got older, I realized that the front of our house, we entered our house from the side. So we didn't really enter our house from the front. And we grew up in an old house. I think it was like 80 years old or whatever. Had this really cool thing as you come into the house. Maybe I'll have a picture of it and I'll show it to people. But this really cool thing that you could come up and you couldn't see, like it was this huge wall. So from the street, you couldn't see like what was under this area as you came up the stairs. And so when I was like 16 or 17, we got done with the end of the night. Any beer that was left over from anybody, generally my beer wasn't left over, but any people that couldn't drink their beer, I'd just be like, give it to John, give it to John, give it to John. I would just store it there, and you couldn't see it. Parents never walked in there. So we had lots of little areas around my house that contraband could be kept. But that's a good story about Hans. He did not know, like, what he was able to provide to the family.
That's funny. Yeah, that reminds me of something from the 80s. So we had 15 acres, right? And my mom was not a fan of dandelions. We had like 100 rose bushes and rhododendrons on our property. It was beautiful in the spring. Yeah, just phenomenal. But when we were little, she'd had it with these dandelions. And we didn't have a lot of money, and we wanted Dove ice cream bars, which was they were really expensive back in the day, like $2 or something, which was a lot back in the day. Because we used to be able to get candy bars for 50 cents. And we still had like penny and nickel candy that you could get at the little store. And maybe it was $1 or something like that. I don't remember, but it was a lot back then. And so we wanted a bar. My mom gave each of us a hammer, and we were little, right? Most people wouldn't give small children hammers these days, but so we had 3 hammers, and she told us that we could have a penny for every dandelion we ripped out of the yard.
Wow.
So the 3 of us little kids spent, I don't even know how much time going around 15 acres and pulling up dandelions until each of us had enough money to get to go buy a Dove ice cream bar from the little store, because it was a hot day. And then we were so proud of ourselves, and we took our money and we rode our bikes over to the little store, and we got to have our Dove ice cream bars, and it was amazing.
Oh, that's a great story. Good for your mom.
Yeah.
That's a good story.
Thanks. Yeah. I am very blessed to have such exceptional parents. I mean, like, everybody has problems. I feel like, I shouldn't say everybody because that's an absolute, but I feel like most people have some sort of issue with their parents at some point, and I'm not an exception to that rule. I definitely do. But my mom and I have a phenomenal relationship. She's an incredible human being.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. So, but that was just like, we worked hard. We had an apple tree, and my youngest brother was allergic to bees, and like we had an EpiPen. And so, my middle brother, Dan, and we'd have these wheelbarrows, and we'd have to pick up all the apples out from underneath the apple tree. And we'd toss them into the wheelbarrow, and then we'd have to take the wheelbarrow that was full, full size wheelbarrow, and then we would have to wheel it like 6 acres away to where we dumped all of the apples so that my youngest brother could be safe. And so we'd put the apples kind of smushy but still edible into a bag, and then mom would make applesauce. And
cool.
And then with the better apples, she would make apple pie. And so when we were kids, we only had wood heat, and our floors were so old and needed to be done that you actually wore socks every day, because if you walked on it, that you would potentially get splinters in your feet.
Yeah, I can relate to that.
Yeah, and my mom would make us fresh baked bread every single day, a loaf of bread. And so you would come down to the smell of rising bread. And then in the fall, you'd have applesauce and rising bread, like, that you got to smell. And it was just glorious. So because my grandpa on my dad's side had a bakery. My grandfather, he died within my first year, but before he died, he had taught my mom how to bake bread. And so that's how that carried on. And it was just a great way to grow up. And she'd make these really great stews. But yes, lots of work between picking up pine cones, apples, and killing dandelions. And we had to deadhead the rhododendrons, which is where you break off the old flower.
Yeah, that's a great story. I did a lot of like yard work when I was a kid, because that's like, before you can get a job somewhere, that's the easiest job to like get.
Yeah, that's what you do. Yeah, you pick up sticks or you mow the lawn. We learned how to drive at a very young age, because that was one of the things that we actually got that was worth a lot of money, was a riding lawnmower. And then my grandfather owned 320 acres. So we would buck bales during the summer. And for those of you who don't know what that is, it's when you have hay bales and you walk around and you pick them up and you toss them onto a truck bed. So these were like at least 75-pound bales of hay that we lifted from the time we were 10. Yeah, so we were really strong.
I'm thinking,
Yeah, I mean, and like, yeah, I think when 10, it was about, and then the Jamie, like we'd learn how to drive like actual trucks because you would drive around the field, and if you couldn't reach the pedals, then somebody else, you sat on their lap while you learned how to drive. And but it was fun. Like our property was so big, it would sometimes take 4 hours on a riding lawnmower to mow the whole thing.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That is. So so your dad was a full-time farmer?
No, he's actually in construction. So
Oh,
he's technically my stepdad, and he's in construction. He's a
okay.
superintendent of a construction company after he built houses. So my stepdad's dad was a builder. He was originally a milkman, and he also
Okay.
tugboats. And he learned how. So when he was a milkman, he then learned how to build houses, and he would build a spec house half the way up and move his family into it. So like my stepdad and his brother and sister, and then
Okay.
he would start the next spec house, and he would build that halfway up, and he would move the family into that, and then finish the first house. And my grandfather was actually a self-made millionaire because he worked so hard, and he was one of the first people that had the idea to put power lines underground.
Wow.
Yeah, and he was a great man. I miss him a lot. He's been dead for probably
Yeah.
years, but yeah, he even struck oil one time in Olympia, but the oil wasn't old enough, so it was just a big
Yeah.
mess. But he made the
That's
paper
hilarious.
like this giant joke, and yeah, he was a merchant marine, and yeah, he was just like maybe 5'6", but just like this spitfire of a man. And you never would have known that he had money because he was just really humble, and he worked really hard, and he drove a pickup truck with like peeling paint on the front of it, and clothes that I was always like, Grandpa, those are so cheap. Where do you even buy those? Like, honestly,
Right.
it would just be this button down blue shirt, then the sleeves rolled up, and his menthol marbles in there, and drink his Canadian dry whiskey. And but he was brilliant, and he was tough, and he's my hero. And yeah,
Oh,
he worked really hard, and he was always honest. He's like,
oh, that's awesome.
yeah, took no shit, told no lies. So it was just he worked like everything was on a handshake deal. And I love people that you can engage with and have that kind of respect and integrity, that it's a handshake deal, and you don't have to worry about it. It just is what it is.
Hard to find these days, is it not?
Yeah, I feel pretty blessed that I work really
Yeah.
hard to surround myself with people who will always be straightforward. And when I ask them a question, they'll tell me the truth, and I can rely on that, and that they're not dramatic. I just don't like to have people around that I have to worry about the toxicity. And there's actually a lot of really good people out there. I know there's a lot of craziness happening in the world, but I promise to everyone that's listening, there are still a tremendous amount of really good human beings that are making a difference, that are honest and full of joy and laughter and wanting to make this world a better place. So have faith. If you're struggling, they are out there.
Yeah, I agree, Elysia. I absolutely agree. Um, People don't really embrace joy, but I wholeheartedly agree that there are a lot of like really good people out there. They don't get very much press, but there's a lot of really good people out there.
Yeah, so many more than people realize. And I'm grateful that things are starting to open up more. Like last night, I was at something called Fridays at 5 in Charlottesville, Virginia. Um,
Okay.
it was insane how many people were there. For anyone who's been to the Folk Life Festival in Seattle, like that's what it was like. It was just this massive. I can't even quantify how many people I saw last night, and it was a little overwhelming because I don't think I've been around that many people in at least like 4 years. Like pre-COVID, I even like hadn't been in groups
Sure.
like that. I'm like, did I just show up at the gorge? Like, what just happened? Um, and there was live music and people like getting beer and food, and just really coming together in community, and just feeling the joy and connection and like the gratitude and relief of people finally getting to come together. It was such a beautiful thing. And like there was almost no one on their phones unless they were like exchanging phone numbers or like looking for a friend that they
That's
were meeting
awesome.
there. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
just like people face to face, chatting, catching up, appreciating the music. It was really cool to get to see and experience. I feel lucky in that.
Heck yeah.
Yeah.
We,
It's coming
that's
together.
awesome. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing that's like really missing in the world. Like when I was a kid, a lot of the families had front porches. Like I have a back porch where we all get together. But like back then, a lot of families had front porches. And so
Love
you
porches.
sat out on the front porch, like on a porch swing, and visited with each other. And like back in the day, you also used to have like a piano in the front room. And so like somebody might be on the piano and somebody on the front porch, and the whole family's like singing songs to
Yeah.
somebody playing the piano inside. And that stuff doesn't really go on anymore. But it did when I was a kid. I was going to interject a little bit. So last weekend I went to an Eagles tribute band like on Friday night. So much fun. And you just take your lawn chair out there. I don't know, there's probably 2,000 people. There was a lot of people there. And it was an Eagles tribute band. And the weather was beautiful. Oh my God. And there were children playing all over the place. And the band brought all these like beach balls, kind of like at a big concert, even though they're a tribute band, they brought all these beach balls and everybody's popping the beach balls up in the air and whatever. And, oh, so much fun. And like I knew the words to every single song. And so like at some point I just like closed my eyes and I was like, oh my God, they sound exactly like the Eagles. And the Eagles are hard to produce. I mean, you're talking a super band, super group. But anyway, so I can relate to the whole like music festival thing because I'm constantly involved in that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I went dancing on salsa dancing on Wednesday, and I hadn't been dancing in probably 2 years, and I was like practically a professional salsa dancer in my 20s. Like I was,
wow.
Yeah, like I was like I couldn't go anywhere without at least one person asking me if I was a professional dancer in my 20s, and yeah, which was super cool. And I definitely could have legitimately been if I had been brave enough to step forward a little bit more and taking lessons and being part of a group. But to get to go and like I've been single for a super long time. So having like the physical connection with people isn't something that gets to happen for me necessarily.
Oh yeah, sure.
Like the whole COVID situation. And it was amazing to get to go out on Wednesday night and just listen to a DJ play salsa music and to be able to dance and engage with people and just like feel that joy, like that vibration, that frequency of people that are dancing and the music and just how it like comes through everybody, right? And the energy of that. And at one point after dance, and I was tired and I just closed my eyes and I just had like this totally blissed out smile on my face. And I just like, just lost myself in that moment. It was such a beautiful thing and just so much gratitude to get to be dancing again. And I've also had 2 low back surgeries. So there was a little bit of fear. Yeah, a little bit of fear, like coming into a totally new like group of people and like having not danced for a while, and dancing usually hurts me. And I was actually able to dance for like an hour and a half. And so it was like a miracle happened that I was able to get to just be there and have such a phenomenal time. So
awesome.
Yeah, dancing. Everybody should go dancing. It fixes everything. Dancing and music fixes everything.
Music and dancing are medicine, and that's missed on so many people because instead they listen to the news, and it'd be much better to like listen to music.
I have not like, and this might sound strange, but I have not like really watched the news since 9/11.
No, I very rarely watch it.
I'm like,
I watch it.
Yeah, if there's something I need to know, like I know enough people who are well informed that someone will tell me. And then if I need to do research, like I will. But for my own sanity, because like I know I have a propensity to worry. So if I watch the news, like I would just be full of, and I'm a very empathic person as a relationship coach and massage therapist. And so I would just spend all my time in angst and worry and anxiety and depression, and it would be terrible. So
that's smart though.
Yeah, like I know myself well enough that I'm like this. Watching the news isn't healthy for me. I understand that some people, it's really important to them to be informed, and I want to respect everybody that's out there and be like, do what's true for you and in alignment with your values and goals. But for me, self-preservation is my value and goal. So I don't watch the news.
No, that's fantastic. No, that's fantastic. I did a podcast one time, and it was, what was it? Fall in love with your best friend. And the whole idea is like, you're your best friend, right?
Right.
And,
yeah. Which is why I do the relationship coaching, and the relationship coaching I do is about the relationship that people have with themselves, because it all starts with you, and how that affects your relationship with your horse, or your relationship with your kids, or your parents, or your partner, your lover, whatever. It's at a high level of accountability and understanding that it's easier to support the people around you if you know how to support yourself and recognize like the healthy boundaries you need to have, and when you're being triggered and when you need to walk away and take responsibility for your actions, so that you're not continuing any sort of like dysfunctional patterns and others, like everybody really wants to have a healthy relationship with other people, right? Like, unless you have some other stuff that you're working through. But it's like, if you want to be a good role model as what that looks like, then you have to show people what it looks like to have a healthy relationship with yourself and boundaries with yourself, and how to set goals for yourself before you try to hold somebody else like accountable for their reactions and how they're not meeting their goals, right? And that's hard for a lot of people. But it doesn't have to be shaming, right? You don't have to shame yourself or invalidate yourself, or shame or invalidate other people. So it's rather about creating that safe container where you can have conversations about what each of you need to create something that's functional and healthy for both people, platonically or otherwise, or business oriented, right? Because we're not mind readers.
Absolutely.
I mean, some people might be. I don't know those people for sure. We don't talk about that because that's kind of weird, but
Yeah. Now, there's a lot of dysfunctional people out there. Hey, I wanted to segue to horses, because I feel like you're probably an equestrian expert in a lot of ways, particularly. But since it's a comedy show, like, I have some funny stories about horses living in Texas and growing up in Missouri. So I've had some interesting run-ins with horses over the years, but I wanted to first like take it to you and say, okay, tell us a funny story about horses. It doesn't necessarily have to be in the 80s, but just a funny story about like horses and people with horses.
I have a few funny stories, actually. We can start with one that actually is from the 80s. So my grandfather bought me 2 white ponies for my 5th birthday. So 1985. And I will never forget that day for as long as I live. And it was just so wonderful.
He bought you 2 puppies?
Ponies.
Oh, ponies. Oh, okay. I was
2
like,
white
how
ponies.
can somebody buy somebody 2 puppies? I don't know.
You totally can do that too, because puppies and kitties should always come in pairs.
Okay, all right.
Personal perspective, I'm like, should have at least 2 kids, 2 puppies,
oh my
2
God.
kittens, 2 fish. Everything comes in pairs at least, because otherwise they'll get lonely. They need something of their own species to be friends with. That's my own personal viewpoint.
Yeah.
But yeah, I understand that not everybody can afford to have 2 of everything, especially kids. They're so expensive.
True that. Yeah.
So anyways, yeah, it was a beautiful day, and there were apple blossoms, and I was at like the living room window, and I was like watching them come by, and but these 2 ponies, it was mother and daughter, and they were both white. We named one Licorice because she was born black, as many white horses are. They're technically usually gray. There are very few like actual white horses that are born white.
Okay. I had no idea about that.
Random fact, yeah.
Okay.
So there's the daughter, Licorice, was an escape artist. She was like Houdini. And there was a gelding that lived in the pasture at somebody else's house across our property line.
Okay.
And so she would suck in her tummy, and she would wiggle underneath the fence. And I was always just like, it wasn't very far off the ground. I was just like, how do you even do that? And she just would squish herself underneath the fence, like wiggling. And then she would run across the field to go see her boyfriend.
That's hilarious. So the horse would wiggle underneath the fence and get out?
Yeah.
The pony?
Yeah, the pony would, I don't remember how tall she was. Maybe 12.3 hands. She was a Welsh mountain cross. And so she would shimmy underneath the fence line so that she could go see her boyfriend. And yeah, it was super funny. And then I had this other mare.
How far away was her boyfriend?
He was just across the property, so probably like 5 or 6 acres. And she would just walk across the road or whatever, and they'd go flirt and nick her over the fence line, and it was fine.
And then she'd just come right, and then she'd scoot right under again?
No, we would have to go get her and bring her back.
Oh my God, that's hilarious.
Yeah, and then I had this other horse. Oh, this is a funny story. It's not from the 80s.
Okay.
So I had this horse who she was a Percheron appendix quarter horse cross. So she was thoroughbred and quarter horse in Percheron. And she was a beautiful black horse. And I had put her in this one field with my 2 other horses, a big black Morgan and a bay Frisian quarter horse cross. And Tequila, Miss Tequila Sunrise was her name. We called it Tequila, or Key for short. And she decided that they should all go for a walk. And I was at work. And so I get a phone call, and my neighbor's like, "Your horses are loose," and one of the other neighbors is threatening to shoot them because they were running through his garden that was his.
Oh my God.
And we were in this valley in Carnation, Washington State. And so what happened is Tequila had a habit that she would stick her head and neck through the gate, and that was latched just by a pole in a hole, basically, right? And she would literally lift the gate off of the post and dump it on the ground to let all of the horses out of the pasture.
Oh my God.
Yeah, she was super smart. And it could be latched on the other side. She had just lifted it and and it was super funny. And so yeah, they were running all over the place. And so my neighbor and I, he jumped in my car, and I was driving down the road, and we had a couple halters and a rope. And so we go, and it's a two-lane road, country road, and it's got pastures with fences on either side of it. And so we go, and we use my Subaru Forester, and we blockade, basically parallel parks across 2 lanes of traffic. And I'm flagging down other people on the other side, and I'm pointing to my car, and I'm just block the road.
Oh my God.
My horses were not interested in being caught. They're like, "We're having an adventure. This is what's happening." And so then we finally get the horses caught right when the sheriff shows up. I literally just finished latching the last horse's halter right when the sheriff came in, because I would have gotten in trouble because my horses are just randomly running all over the road. And I'm like, "It's cool, Mr. Officer. We're taking them back."
Oh my God, that's hilarious.
One of my friends is because the people's traffic started to come, and my neighbors got 2 of my horses, and I'm driving my car while my horse is walking next to my car, trying to get to my car, because I have to move my sheriff there. I have to move my car, and I have to get the horse. My neighbor can only handle maybe 2 horses at one time. And oh, because 2 horses is a lot already in that situation. And we had to walk, I think it was half a mile back to the pasture on the main road, where people do anywhere between 45 to 80 miles an hour.
Wow.
Yeah. So that was exciting.
That's funny. I know, that's wow. I've never heard of horses. I mean, I get it. Our horse does that sometimes. We'll be just have him on, the lead or whatever you call it, and it'll just decide that it wants to go across the pasture to this other horse to say hi. And when it decides to do that, if you accent, it can tell if you barely let go of the rein, it goes down for a little grass, and then it just it's like a football player, just jerk and go. And it's gone.
He's
and when it goes, it goes.
Yeah, and then I had this filly. She was this really sweet Morgan filly, and I had her down in Oregon, and we used to play hide and go seek. So I would run behind a tree, and like I'd tell her to say where she was. We had this really beautiful relationship, and so she'd say where she was, and then I'd run behind the tree, and then she'd come get me.
Yeah.
And then we'd wait, and then I would go run behind the next tree, and then she would come get me behind the next tree. And so we just played this game, and I would be like,
That's awesome.
yeah, it was super sweet. And even when she was older and I brought her to a new place, she would still play hide and go seek with me. It was really sweet. I also taught her how to shake. So she'd like, I'd point at one and she'd like paw out and she'd shake your hand, and she was a great horse.
Oh yeah, Elysia, you have some great stories. So I got to know. So if we look at your laptop and the Word documents, do you have some books in the works right now?
Oh goodness, I'm not currently writing any books. I do have quite a few books that I have titles for that I should be writing and will at one point. But yeah, I did have a Hollywood producer once say that he wanted to talk to me about creating like a documentary or a TV series about my life because it's been so dynamic. But we'll see if that ever comes to pass. I think he had a few different films like slated.
Yeah.
But he initiated the ask. Like that wasn't and that was in October, I think, that conversation was had. But yeah, things have just been so dynamic that I haven't come back. I haven't circled back around to it. And but we've joked, my friends and I have joked for years that I should just have a TV series about my life because I do so many just like silly and random things, and always just wandering around the world trying to make it a better place, from making random people like laugh and smile and bringing levity in grocery stores or on the street, to doing stuff like my global men's summits where I had men representing every continent in the world, to support one another.
Sure. No, that's greatness. Okay, so this is the part of the show where we promote you, and then I'll promote me. But first, we're going to promote you. So go ahead and tell everybody like everything that you're involved in that you want to know. Oh,
goodness gracious! Everything that I'm involved in? How much time?
Well, you know what you think's important. And you're going to send me some stuff too, so people that want to stay in contact with you and want to join like your YouTube channel and that kind of thing will be able to stay in contact with you. This is an international YouTube channel, so it's actually it's seen in Iraq, it's seen in England, it's seen really all over the world. So we definitely want whatever message you're trying to get out or business that you're doing right now, anything that's important to you, we want to make sure you have the platform to promote. And I'll just be quiet and give you the stage.
Well, I do appreciate that, John. That's very kind of you. And thank you again for having me here on your podcast.
Absolutely.
Fun. So one of my main goals is to work on empowering at least 1 billion people on the planet. One of the ways that I'm working on doing that is creating global men and women summits in every country in the world. So there are 2 different summits, and so a woman always hosts the men's summit and a man always hosts the women's summit, so that we have an anchor in each. And so in the men's summit, no other women are allowed as audience members or speakers, and in the women's, no other men are allowed as audience members or speakers, because it's about creating that sacred space for each group of people to be supported. And so the different summits will be held in the native language of that country, talking about culturally relevant subjects and supporting people, speakers from that country, and hopefully having somebody on there that has been either in civil war with that country or from another warring country, and have people be able to vulnerably share their stories and be supported by one another to transcend into like a healthier, peaceful place, as we all have our moments of struggle. And then I have a men's group called Global Resources for Men, and so we'll have chapters in each of the countries. And then I have a women's group called Phoenix Rising Women's Group. And so the groups are there basically to create a safe, non-judgmental space for people to be able to share without shame or invalidation and be supportive of one another. And it's just really about working hard to create a voice for all people and a safe space for them to be able to be supported and live their most authentic lives. Because a lot of us don't feel safe to fully share our voices and be supported in community. And that's a really unfortunate thing. So it's important for all of us to try and do our best to create those spaces. And then my YouTube channel is Horsepower Empowerment Through Connection.
Okay.
And I interview people all over the world, primarily who are empowering others through partnering with horses. And they vulnerably share their own stories so that somebody out there listening who is potentially struggling with the same thing won't feel so alone in what it is that they're going through, and they may be inspired to pursue their own dreams as the people on the podcast get to share the dreams that they've accomplished in their lives in partnership with horses. So those are some of the things that I'm working on. I also do relationship coaching. So it's equine assisted relationship coaching. So I help people, like I said before, with the relationship that they have with themselves. And when I partner with people with horses or go to places where there are horses that people can come in and partner with if they don't have their own, it helps them to be able to really be present and learn healthy communication and boundaries and have less of a filter. Like when people are engaging with horses, it's different because they tend to receive the information from the horse without a filter other than the filter they have within themselves, versus when we engage with each other as human beings, we tend to have a natural filter that comes in place with our ego and like wondering what the other person's agenda is. And it's really nice to be able to just like strip that particular filter away and have the people assimilate the information in a purer form, and it allows them to reach their goals more quickly. So yeah, if anybody's in Virginia listening, I do massage, and then I do inspirational speaking events. So sharing my own story. If anybody wants me to be on their podcast anywhere in the world, I'm always happy to connect with other like great human beings who are trying to make a difference. And just seeing how we can support one another in collaboration and community. So if you want to play with me with horses anywhere in the world, or be part of like the Global Men's Summit or the Global Women's Summits as speakers or sponsors, collaborators, whatever, like please do reach out to me. I'm always grateful to continue to support as many as we can.
Elysia, that's awesome. You
I know
know, so far you've had the most worldwide vision for what you're trying to accomplish than any other guests that I've had on. Not taking away from any of my other guests, but you definitely have like a huge why of what you're doing, and it sounds like you're super passionate about it. So cheers. I mean, that's really remarkable.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I just, there's been a lot that's gone on these last couple of years, and people are struggling.
Yeah.
And I just want to help people overcome fear so they're not controlled by it, and they can live life authentically. And when you're not controlled by your emotions, you're more able to make neutral, logic-based decisions and be more in alignment with your true self and integrity with your values and understanding your worth. And when we create that space for people, like their natural talents really come out, and that's what we need in the world. We need people that can share their particular talents because they see the world in ways that no one else can, as each of us as individuals. And if we want to make this world a better place, then and not fight with each other, then we have to not be controlled by fear. We need to be able to own our beautiful selves that have so much to give, no matter where you are in the world or what your socioeconomic status is, or your political or religious affiliation. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, humans are humans, and there's a lot of really great ones out there. They just
that's awesome. That's awesome. So I'm going to do a little blurb on me.
Let's do it.
Okay. So, first and foremost, I want like any of your listeners to know that I'm a motivational speaker as well, and I want to be interviewed because I have a lot of years of personal business and just obstacles that I've had in my life. 2 family members that passed away in a 3-month time period years ago, and just how you can turn that into something positive in your life. Because a lot of times when tragedy hits, people come away from tragedy less than what they could be instead of more than what they could be. And I came away from tragedy more than what I could be, because I'm living the life for two other people, especially my brother that passed away when he was 32. So what I'm passionate about is I've been professionally selling for 31 years. And I don't believe that there's anybody out there that sells from the heart like I do. And I do believe that people that are out there, that if they truly want to be successful, you have to sell authentically, you have to sell from the heart, and you have to match the right product to the right customer. And it has to be, humble, and it also has to be like the right thing to do. Not just to make money, because like one of the things that goes through my mind as I'm working my day is it's always, to me, it's more than the money. It's about the relationship, and if the relationship is strong, the money will come. So how do you learn some of my wisdom? Well, I've made it real easy for people. There's an inexpensive book on Amazon. It's called Sales Warrior, just like my name, John Sales Warrior. And there's a book, and there's a course on Teachable called Sales Warrior Boot Camp Module 1. And it's 5.5 hours of inspiration. So it's not like how to overcome objections. It's how to authentically connect with somebody that you've never done business with and do a ton of business with them to the point where they're referring you to all their friends and family. And that's what I teach. I teach you how to get out of bed and get after it. So if you're looking for somebody that's going to psychologically twist somebody's mind around to turn what you have into something they want, that's not what I'm going to teach you how to do. I'm going to teach you how to get out of bed and find the right people for the right products, and do it in such a way that you're going to love doing it and have balance in your life. And in this show, it's just all about fun. It's all about comedy. It's about authentically connecting with each other through comedy, and hopefully it makes the world a better place. Like, I feel like there's so much disgruntled people in the world, and like you, Elysia, I'm very, like you said, levity. Like, that's me. Like, I'm always trying to find out, like, what's fun. Like, I'm always asking myself, how can I have fun? And it's almost like the 13-year-old mentality. Well, what could we do today that would be fun? Or what could we do in the next hour could be fun? And I think most people instead are just like so concentrating on the problems in the world that they're not having fun. So if nothing else, we hope you have fun watching this show.
That's right. Thank you so much. And wasn't there some other movie?
Yeah, so my buddy Sal, I'm going to go visit my buddy Sal soon in August. He's out in Long Island. And Sal is such a sweet man. We met on the internet years ago, and now we're finally going to meet in person. And Sal has done so much in the entertainment business. They call him the script doctor, because famous people that are writing screenplays will get a hold of Sal, and he'll improve the dialogue and the relatability of the characters and really flesh out the characters.
But in the movie industry.
Oh, do you? Okay, so maybe even similar to Sal. So his name's Sal Rinella, and he has a movie that he wrote a few years ago that he's in the process of finishing up, and it's called Good Friday, which is a mob comedy, and Sal plays a priest, and so it's all good. So here's to you, Sal, and the whole cast of Good Friday. I think it'll be out soon. Sal's been. Yeah, it's gonna be a lot of fun. So we'll go ahead and sign off for now. So Elysia, go ahead and say bye-bye to everybody.
Thanks everybody for watching. We'll see you later. Signing off from Elysia Buffs from Global Equine Affiliates.
Awesome, awesome. From Dallas, Texas, as always. Cheers, everybody.
Bye.